So I thought I would just close with a few more heroes, and maybe we'll open to questions. I wanted to name a few more. They're not generally from the government, but you know, this whole idea we have that the government is bad is just mistaken, that there are a bunch of people who can't make it in the real world. It's really mistaken, because often these same people, they'll spend some years in the government, and then they'll spend some years in business, and then they'll spend some years as a philanthropist. So what are they? No one of these is evil. You have to judge people by the whole course of their lives. So I may just give you a few more examples of heroes. And can I have a show of hands? How many of you know these people? Florence Kelley. Who knows who she is? I thought that's what I'd get. Nope, I don't see any hand up. Maybe you know her. What did she do? You got it. All right. One of you knows Florence Kelley. She was, this is late 19th century. She was a friend of Jane Addams. And Jane Addams is better known. She created these settlement houses. She thought that there's a problem in our society that the poor and the rich are separated. They should get back together. So she created settlement houses in the city and asked rich people to live there so that they'd be next door to poor people, and it would create a more harmonious society. So the first thing that Florence Kelley did is move into one of Jane Addams' settlement houses. On top of that, she created the National Council, I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing. National Consumer League. You ever heard of that? 1899. And what it did is it looked at products and looked at working conditions there, and it gave a seal of approval, the white seal. So she was always non-profit, private, but she was looking at phishing and trying to expose it. I'm giving another example. Alice Lakey. Anyone know who she is? See, I'm right. The real heroes of our society are forgotten. These are good people. She was advocating, again, not in the government, but advocating for the government to create the Food and Drug Administration to test foods and test medicines. Do the medicines really work? And in 1906, she was a success. I picked those two because they're both women. And I think it's important to remember that women in the Victorian age were not pushovers. They were not unliberated. In some sense, I suppose they were, but in other senses, we had people like this who campaigned and got things done. I'll give you a third example. William Henry Merrill. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. I did a similar test in another group, business group, and I got the same reaction. Well, William Henry Merrill was a young engineer, and in the World's Fair of 1893, I'm trying to remember. No, maybe it was the Columbian Exposition of 1901. There was a big fair in Chicago. And the big thing there is they had the electric tower. Electricity was coming in, and so they had this big Eiffel Tower filled with light bulbs. And every night they would turn it on, and it would all light up, and everyone would be amazed. But the problem was that these guys didn't know wiring. And Mr. Merrill was called in as a consultant. He said, "You're going to get someone electrocuted here. This isn't right." So he fixed it all. No one was ever electrocuted at the Columbian Exposition. But he later then created a nonprofit called Underwriters Laboratory that would test electrical devices for safety, or UL. And you might still see it. Look under your computer. There'll be a UL sticker. That was nonprofit from around 1900 until 2012, and it became a for-profit company. So now I asked someone, why did they switch from nonprofit to for-profit? And they said, well, their business seemed to be more fluid. They could raise money faster if they could reward investors. They chose to go from nonprofit to for-profit, but it's still a great company. is the idea that nonprofits are the only nice people and everyone else is profit hungry is wrong. United Laboratories was developed out of a mission, a social purpose, and it still is functioning today. And so I have one more hero, and I'll ask if you've heard of him. Ben Bernanke. I won't ask for a show of hands. I think maybe you've heard of him. He was the Federal Reserve Chairman starting in 2006 until 2000. He served 2 terms, right? So 2014. Now replaced by Janet Yellen. But he took a very courageous step to save the economy from another Great Depression, because we were headed in 2008 into a collapse. And the collapse was partly built on phishing for fools. We had mortgage originators who were doing fraudulent mortgage origination. You had mortgage counselors who would tell people to lie on the mortgage application. This is documented. They would say, they're coming in to buy a house, and then the guy would say, well, what is your income? And you tell him what your income is, and then he'd say, you know, that's not quite enough to qualify you for this mortgage. But are you sure? Don't you have some other income? And then you say, well, theoretically, maybe we have this income. And you say, we'll just put down this higher number and we'll get the mortgage. That's fraud, but it was being done increasingly. And then the whole system started to collapse. And we didn't have the political ability to deal. Well, we did have TARP and things like that, but it wasn't enough. So he then really did innovative monetary policy, things like forward guidance and all these different facilities that they set up to. And brought interest rates down to 0 and held them there until we're essentially back. The U.S. is among just about the strongest economy in the world lately, despite this financial crisis. So he has a new book out, which actually came out about 2 days ago, called The Courage to Act. Describing his experiences as Fed chairman. And I'm starting to read the book. It's too long. If you want a short, quick read, that's the wrong book. But at one point in the book, he talks about issues that I've been talking about the need for regulation, the need for government oversight, and he attributes it partly to his reading of behavioral economics. He wasn't really an early arriver into behavioral economics, but it is in his book, and he does describe it as part of his motivation. So I'll just stop there. So what I'm saying, though, again, is this is in praise of heroes. It's also, I would come back, it's in praise of free markets as well, as long as we have the referees. It's like a sports event. We can all compete on a certain playing field, but it's got rules and it has guidance from our society. And then we can then all get together after work and we're all friends again. That's my vision. I'll open this to questions.